We are live, Jimmy, on the Facebooks. Say hi, everybody. All right. So this is a little bit of the pre-show, everyone. Welcome to the live podcast. If you're joining us live, couple of things. Comment, #TeamLive, and tell us that you're here so we can see that we've got at least a couple of people on that want to listen to us live today. And then again, before we go, what we're going to do, we're going to record the podcast today so you guys get to listen to it before it actually makes its way over to iTunes and all the other places that we put it. But while we're talking, you get the chance to interact with us a little bit. So we're not going to stop the podcast and answer your questions. But if you type your questions or responses or takeaways while we're going, we'll stop after the recording and we'll spend a few minutes engaging with you guys, answering some questions, pulling out some more thoughts. Because we always do that after the podcast is over anyway. We always kind of break it down and talk about cool thoughts in our head. So we'll do that with you guys right afterwards. So,
and if you comment something funny, I can't say that I won't derail the entire podcast because of it and start laughing.
You might. So if you guys want to, if anyone wants to be forever codified in a CFT podcast, try to figure out how to make Jimmy laugh.
Yeah, Chad last week, Chad Payton did a phenomenal job. I couldn't stop. I had to pretty much pause the podcast. I was laughing.
Well, all right. So you've got a bar. Chad set a bar. See if anybody wants to beat that.
That's pretty funny though.
So this is a lot of fun. I like doing this, Jimmy, being live in the group and going through the podcast stuff. So thank you for everybody that's here. Thank you for listening. If you're listening to the podcast, if you're not listening to the podcast, what's wrong with you? You should be. And I would invite all of you that if you are enjoying the podcast, find somebody who is stuck financially, who still listens to Goldfish Advice, and share the podcast with them, right? Pay this forward and help us get this message out further. We would very much appreciate you doing that. And we are, Jimmy, I was just looking up the stats today. What's your guess as to where we are in downloads, Jimmy?
1 to million.
Oh, that's where we want to be. That's our someday goal. We are at 19,200 downloads. We are knocking on the door of 10,000.
Maybe it's 1 million Instagram likes I have.
That's all that Jimmy cares about, really.
Yeah.
Right? So with that said, when we get to
Scott Lane did it. Talk nerdy to me.
Yeah, right here. There it is.
Nice work, Scott.
When we when we hit 20,000 downloads, we will do a fun giveaway. So be watching out for that in the next couple of days. We got a lot of cool stuff in brewing that we could pull out and do a giveaway for those that are subscribed to the podcast. Okay, with that, Jimmy, you ready to go live?
Let's go.
Am I gonna be the host or are you gonna run?
Yeah, why don't you be the host? Because I'm gonna tell.
Because I'll be pulling it out of you. Okay. All right. So here we go. Welcome back, Empire Builders, to the Rise Up Live Free podcast, the only source of principle-based financial strategy. We're the only ones out there teaching you the most direct, quickest, safest path to becoming financially free in 10 years or less. Brad Gibb here as your host, and I'm joined by the one, the only, Jimmy Vreeland. How you doing, Jimmy?
Hey, what's up, guys?
This is a very fun topic. It is going to be a controversial topic, but it's a very fun topic, I think, especially for you, Jimmy, because this is one that you get, because you're in this world so deep, you get to hear people talk about this concept. And because you live every day the other side of it, you get to sort of laugh at people and say, oh, you're silly because you think the world is one way, but I live in the world that you think you're in, and it's not at all what you think.
Correct. Yes.
So that world is the world of quote unquote passive income. And we're going to make the declaration today that not only does all passive activity require or come on the back of hyperactive activity and income, but the idea, the way passive income is described in other financial areas is a lie. It doesn't exist. It's not reality.
It's a marketing term.
It is. It's a nice dreamy thing that we all would wish could happen, but not only is it not real, it's not real because it violates principle. Okay. So we're going to go back to the underlying principle of, well, okay, if passive income doesn't exist, how are Brad, Ryan, and Jimmy telling me I can be financially free, right? Let's connect those dots. So let's dig out that principle. But before we do, you've got a fun story that illustrates this in a non-financial arena that I think will help us understand where we're trying to go.
Yeah, and so a little background on the story is like a lot of times somebody will buy their first house from me and call in like 60 days and be like, it's not working. I'm not making money. And I'm just like, oh my God. Like, what do you think? This is a long-term investment. Like, what do you think this actually is? Like, what is actually happening? Even though we tell them, hey, this is a long game. Like, they still want to report back 60-day data. And so the best analogy I have from it, it came to me on the jiu-jitsu mat. And I get it. I have an Instagram profile. I'm 40 years old. And I'm talking about jiu-jitsu. Like, I'm not a poser. I genuinely enjoy the sport. I'm not one of those Instagram BJJ turds. And for the record, I'm horrible at it. But
there you go. That's what I was asking for. Now we've got some credibility from Jimmy because he will self-admit that he's terrible at it. If he said he was good and could beat any listener, then we'd know he was a total poser. Okay.
Yeah.
So Jimmy's terrible at jiu-jitsu, but he likes it anyway, and he learned a fun lesson.
And it's just, and my kids love it, and something we can go to class together. So get off my back. I'm not a poser. Anyway. So I'm trying to learn this one move in half guard. And so I work with the coach for like 20 minutes and I get like 20 reps on it. And then I go live and I just get destroyed and it doesn't work at all. And then the coach, I spar with the coach. He comes in and just destroys me on the same move. And I'm like, Dan, I worked really hard for 20 minutes. I got 20 reps in. And by the way, Dan's a brown belt and like, awesome. I'm like, you're the worst coach ever, Dan. You suck. And he's like, you're right, Jimmy. It's me. I'm a bad coach. It's not that you suck at this game and have no experience and no reps and don't work hard enough to get really good.
And that's especially inside of a game of jiu-jitsu where how complex jiu-jitsu is. It's funny that Jimmy thinks that in 20 minutes he can learn one move and then be better at it, right? That's just one little thing that then would change everything, not a combination and an integration as well as the mental game and the physical stamina, everything that goes around that move actually being successful. And then the quick start 7-year-old child inside of Jimmy saying, I should be good at this now.
I'm entitled to be good at this. And Dan, you're the worst coach ever. That's
yeah, and Dan's response was perfect. He's like, you're right, Jimmy. I'm just a bad coach, right? Not that I have whatever belt he is, right? It's not that he's been doing this for however long he's been doing it. You're right. He's a bad coach. It's on me, right?
Yeah.
So how does this relate to what does jiu-jitsu and Jimmy getting beat in jiu-jitsu have to do with passive income?
So like when I get that 60-day call about a house, it's the same thing. Like I told you, you may not be making money in 60 days. I told you may not in 6 months, but the principles of wealth building around a house. It has core four pillars. You're getting wealthier. Like if I go in and I do 20 minutes of drilling, over time, I will get better at jiu-jitsu. But it is a long game to get to any chance of being decent at that sport.
And this is where everyone's going to gasp because I live my life by spreadsheets. But this is where numbers will lie to you, right? When we show you numbers, especially projecting financial freedom over a 10-year time period, they are inherently lying to you because we're smoothing everything out. The more time we put into the game plan and the more inputs we put into the game plan, by definition, the more it's lying to you because the more it's smoothing out. You may still get to the same point, right? And we've covered this in lots of other places, but the line getting you there from a mathematical conceptualization can only be straight and smooth. But if we zoomed in, right, then we start to see the variation that's going to happen, right? And that's not in the spreadsheet, but it would be there in real life as we zoom in and get closer to it. We see things like vacancies and make readies and costs. And we had a tenant's house burned down, right? We see those elements of it, but it doesn't deter us that we zoom back out. We're still on track to get where we want to get to.
Yeah, and all the bad things and all the dips, you're still learning, you're still getting better. And, and I think I get so triggered by this because I was the same person. It's like, what do you mean? I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I spent $10,000 on an internet course. I bought a house. I should be rich right now. Why am I not? This is unfair.
Yeah. Or looking at it and saying, Brad, you said vacancy should be 10% or 7% or whatever we assumed it was going to be. But that can't mathematically exist in a 60-day time period because a tenant's not going to be gone for 7 days. Yeah. Or whatever it would be, right? So when we get closer, the volatility has to be higher, and we've got to give it time because if you have a vacancy in the first 60 days, well, then the long game of this is when you find that tenant that stays for 4 years, right? We get the balance point and normalcy is brought back to it, right? And so with this concept of where we're going, if we want the outcome, if we want financial freedom, if we want our cash flow to exceed our expenses, we need to redefine what passive income is. And we touched on this on one of our early episodes, and we want to come back to it and go now a level deeper. So there is a podcast episode called The Passive Income Lie, where we began to introduce this concept, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into it. But Jimmy, when we say it comes on the back of hyperactive activity, what are you talking about? And why do I, as the one who wants to be passive in this, I don't want a second job. Real estate is not my passion. I don't want to talk to tenants. I don't want to fix toilets. I don't want the active side of it. What does my relationship have to look like with you who does live on the other side of it?
Well, one, you have to make a bunch of income to then afford down payments to buy assets.
Okay, so if we go back to the cash flow tactics, tip to tail educational process around money, we have to start with production. You have to make enough money to become financially free. That's where it starts.
Can I tell another story?
Sure.
So, and I've mentioned this in other podcasts, but I show up, and we're straight ripping the title of this podcast from a mentor of mine, Jason Medley. But I showed up to Collective Genius with his a mastermind of you got to do 100 deals a year to get in the room. I sold my way in the room. I barely get in the room. And then over time, I've been in the group 3 years now. Everybody shows up their first meeting and they announce who they are. They show pics of their family. It's beautiful. We're excited. Everybody's excited to have them in the group. And then they say, oh, and I'd like $20,000 of passive income from assets. And then everybody just rips into him at that point. And so, because like Jason had to rip into me and he's like, bro, passive income comes after hyperactive, active income. And then everybody in the group now, it's the same thing. It's like, you'll get there for sure. You'll get that $20K a month passive after hyperactive, active activity and income. And just once he was able to set the frame for me that, hey, yeah, this Rich Dad Poor Dad thing, passive income equals expenses, it does work. But one, you cannot short circuit the process. And I tried to short circuit the process through debt. And I tried to play the whole no money down creative financing game. And you cannot short circuit the principles or the process. So it does tie back into cash flow tactics. It starts with production.
Yep. Okay. So on your side of it, Jimmy, you then dove in and you started to really grind in the hyperactive activity, right? You built a business, you built systems and processes, you documented what you needed to do, you learned to lead, you learned to manage.
I kept failing, I kept messing up, I kept getting scared, terrified. Yeah.
So you're building a business that will then, now that it's in a well-running oiled machine someday in the future, it can provide that passive, quote unquote, passive income. Okay.
Well, I like the word leverage.
So let's define that for a second. So, cause that'll transition nicely into, I don't want to build a real estate business. So I don't want to be a good wholesaler. And then, cause Jimmy, you've worn, it's been a really actually amazing to watch you, Jimmy, do this, because what Cashflow Tactics asked of Jimmy was go build a one-of-a-kind active turnkey company so that Cashflow Tactics can prove to the marketplace how this all works.
Well,
So
it was we need 100 a year at least.
Yeah, and go 3, 2, 1, go. And so, but it's been interesting because every time you've built something and then exposed a gap somewhere else, and I remember lots of times you coming in and being like, okay, Jimmy's going to disappear. I'm going to go be a rent manager for 90 days because that's where we're struggling, and we're going to bring that up, right? Yeah. I'm going to be an acquisitionist for 90 days. I'm going to be whatever. I'm going to raise capital for 90 days, whatever those elements are. But I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to build an active real estate company. I don't want to be a good acquisitionist. I don't want to be a good money raiser. I don't want to be a good landlord. So the transition to what I do need to do to have passive income in the game of real estate or leveraged income will come off this definition. So why leveraged income and not passive income?
And so this is straight from Keith Cunningham. And this was a life-changing book called The Road Less Stupid. But so between Medley and then Keith Cunningham reading this book. So Keith Cunningham describes it as this is, I always forget this, and I think the second time on the podcast we've talked about it, but what is it? A merry-go-round with your kids, right? So let's say you've got 20 kids on your merry-go-round. That first rotation, like you're behind it, you're pushing hard, right?
Yep.
And so when leveraged income is once you have hyperactive activity and you have the merry-go-round spinning, right? Then all you have to do is tap it every several rotations, right?
Yep.
Then maybe you could pay somebody to tap the merry-go-round for you. Or you could build a stick and the stick could just tap it.
Or you could put a little motor on it or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, but you get some point that you're not the person grinding and gritting your teeth and pushing that merry-go-round. You're building levers continuously so you can stand farther and farther away from the merry-go-round. And once I saw that paradox, it made a ton of sense to me that I am now trying to just build longer levers. And levers generally mean systems, processes, things of that nature.
So there's the shift, everybody listening, that you need to get out of that conversation was you're not buying houses. This financial freedom has nothing to do with vaults and single family homes. Like get past what we're trained, taught, and educated to see, which is the thing right in front of our face, right? One of the most difficult thought experiments to understand is the seen versus the unseen, right? In economics, we talk about those as second order consequences, the after effect of the thing that we can see right now. Inside of the game of leveraged income, it's not about each individual deal then adding up to being financially free. But that's the only way we can talk about it at the beginning stages. What it really is, it's understanding that we're building a system to deliver something for us. And the reason why we choose vaults and single family homes and 30-year mortgages is those are the easiest building blocks to create the system that we want. So that's the way Cashflow Tactics look at it, is we threw out all products. We went to the principles behind it and then said, what does the system have to look like to give me what I want to make the merry-go-round spin? And how do I build that longer and longer stick so I can get further and further away from that active activity? And then we went back and found the right building blocks to organize it, the simplest, the easiest, and the fastest way to get there, right?
Yep.
But to be able to stand far away from it and keep the merry-go-round spinning, we have to understand enough about the system. Here's a dumb way to think about it. But if the merry-go-round is spinning to the right and I come in to run the system and I don't ask the question which direction it's spinning and I start trying to spin it the other direction, we're going to have chaos, right?
Yep.
So if I don't understand the system that I'm trying to manage, it's going to turn into chaos. Where in someone else's hands, it may be working and spinning beautifully, right?
And then, I would, let's say this hypothetically was happening. I'm sure the person it's working beautifully for just has so many reps in education that it looks simple, but you are not seeing just the intellectual work it took to build it.
Yes. And this is why we stump so many people when they come in and they're like, sell me real estate or let me set up a vault. What's our answer, Jimmy, when somebody comes in and says that?
No, because I'm not going to want to educate you when you're in your panicky time.
we're not babysitters,
Yeah.
right? I want to remain financially independent, not have a full-time job babysitting people, right? And then in the Facebook groups that we run, in the coaching masterminds that we run, when questions are asked, it like after a while, everybody knows what our answer is going to be, but it grinds on you at the beginning when they ask a question and we then answer it with our own question, right? Or we say, it depends. What do you want? What's the principle at play? And how does it fit into your game plan? Because that's the question. It's not about, is this house a good deal? What do I do? Like, we can't answer those. We're really trying to empower you by teaching you what the system needs to look like. Then the products make sense. Okay. But without that understanding. So to get passive income, leveraged income. Yes. Thank you. To get leveraged income, our role is to understand the interactions of the system. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's our role. That's our responsibility.
Let me back that up.
Work we have to do.
Can I back you up real quick? Yep. I think the real work is distilling the principles or what actually going to do it. And that requires 1,000 hours of education.
And that's why the Cashflow Tactics Academy has over 100 videos to go through, because we have to spend time in it. But gratefully, we've got me who wants to create 100 videos, and we've got Jimmy that's like, great, put those over there, and I'll ask you about it after I've hit the wall, right?
Yeah.
So we bring a nice mix of this to say, great, let's get you moving. Let's get you enough information. Let's start you down the path and let you hit walls. And as you do it, we'll now bring out the principle, teach you through it, and we're going to learn as we go. Just like could somebody become a jiu-jitsu master by reading a book and watching other people spar?
No.
You have to get on and you have to get your face ground into the mat to ever progress along. And wealth is the same way, right? We get so many people coming back and saying, oh, but that didn't work, or man, that was painful. I didn't want that to happen.
And you got to get humble. If we're going to go back to jiu-jitsu, it's like, you got to get humble. The first time some millennial choked me out, that like I outweighed by 50 pounds, it's a humbling experience.
If you ever want to see Jimmy probably at his poopiest is when he's recently been choked out by a millennial. I know the tone in his voice when that's happened. I'm like, oh, Jimmy, you got choked out. All right, I'm going to wait.
There's a day coming when my daughter will choke me out. Like, that'll be a humbling day.
That'll be a humbling day. If I can choke you out, that would be awesome.
I would just quit at that point.
So we have to go through this process. So passive income, leveraged income is a process that is a system. So what we strive to do inside of Cashflow Tactics is teach the system. This is why we talk about leverage. This is why we talk about the vault. This is why we talk about taxes. This is why we talk about property analysis and markets and all the elements that go into it, so that rather than just selling you the promise of, cool, come buy a house from me and all your problems will go away, right? That's how every other turnkey provider sells real estate. That's how everybody else selling similar products to the vault or anything else would be.
Oh my God, can I bring up a tangent?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was in the gym this morning and I saw some ad for like a traditional financial planner, like Edward Jones type thing. And then it was like, we will solve uncertainty. And I was just like, dude, like the mass marketing message of that is so wrong. Like,
yeah.
Human uncertainty's been like a 20,000 year problem.
Now, Edward Jones has got it. No problem.
And you're going to make this claim that that is so wrong.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Cashflow Tactics principle is like, we're going to at least give you some questions to think about uncertainty and how to analyze it.
We're going to teach you how to work through and deal with certainty. We're going to teach you to coexist with uncertainty, right?
Yeah, because here's a little quick tip about reality and human nature. Anybody who promises you they will eliminate uncertainty for you is telling you gravity doesn't exist.
Yes, you should. So yeah, rather than trying to say that's like trying to solve the problem of human flight by trying to eliminate gravity rather than learn to use gravity to fly, right? So that's what we're trying to teach you how to do. So now to bring this back and make it a little bit more tactical before we sign off. So inside of real estate, as the vehicle to creating leveraged income, we have to understand the system. We have to understand capital, right? Because that's where it starts. Whether we're bringing it to the table or accessing it somewhere else, we have to understand capital, capital flows, the cost of capital, and how that works, right? Then we have to understand the acquisition process, the metrics that go into it, the process that's required, who's adding value, how that person's getting paid, why you would want to exchange there, right? Then same thing on rehab. We have to understand what makes sense to be fixed and what doesn't. We have to know what good or complete looks like, right? We have to understand we're not buying a house for us to live in, but for somebody else to rent from us, and what the standard. I laugh every time somebody's like, oh, I want granite countertops. Well, great. I appreciate that you want them, but who does your tenant want? Did you ask what your tenant wants? And their willingness to pay rent says that they don't.
Well,
right?
even if they want it, do you know the replacement cost on a broken piece of granite?
And can we charge that back in rents? No. So they're not voting with their dollar that that's what they want, right?
Yeah.
And then we've got to go in and we've got to understand leasing and management and turnover and eviction and what that process looks like and who needs to be involved in it and how it should play out, and be prepared for when those things come.
And then you may not be swinging the hammer on the rehab, but make no doubt about it. Learning about all this stuff, understanding it is work.
It is. I don't know how to do any of those things, but I know how to look at my process and my system and understand if it's not working, right? Think about when Henry Ford built the Ford Motor Company. He didn't know how to build an engine. He hired engineers to build the engine, but he knew when they were getting it wrong so that he could go back and course correct the system. So our job is to learn enough about the system to become the CEO that can keep the cadence moving along. But I don't have to know how to swing a hammer. I don't have to know the legalese around leases or the depth of the insurance contracts involved here. I don't have to do that, but I just have to understand the elements of the system. Okay. That's what we're teaching at Cashflow Tactics. We're not teaching you how to be better at real estate. We're teaching you how to be better at running and managing systems. Okay. So
and understanding the value of a system and understanding, I think we do a decent job of admitting where we suck and where we're trying to grow at that point, and just giving everybody, I wish somebody would have given me the heads up and been like, hey, this will be a soul-sucking siege of starting this business. I wish somebody would just, at least I can do that.
And we get everybody excited, financial freedom in 10 years or less, right? It's not a lie, but we leave out year 2 when it's like, this is a soul-sucking process and it's dark sometimes, right?
Like you'll have to challenge everything about yourself and change everything. But like, dude, you got like 80 to 100 years on this planet. Why not? Why not play that game?
It will be worth the investment on the back end. And the cool part about what we've done here, and this, as you understand that we're trying to teach you a system, we're trying to help you become a better version of yourself so that you can manage that system and have this leveraged income. But Jimmy, you and I and Ryan, we had to do this mostly alone, right? I had to sit in my car and listen to audiobooks and try to figure this out myself. I had to.
No, dude, I had to do it with a turd of an old business partner, and then I had to buy him out. So yeah, I would have preferred a loan.
She would have preferred a loan. I did it. I tried to do it inside of a spreadsheet, which was really difficult, right? It took me 40 months before I finally did anything and tried to make anything work, right? Because we did this alone. I didn't have somebody. I had the theoretical someday maybe horizon out there, but nothing in the middle. And so that's what the Cashflow Tactics community is all about, is you get to see a line of people, no matter where you're starting out, there's somebody right in front of you and somebody right behind you. And it gives you perspective to how this is going to go before you actually get to the horizon. That's why we do the podcast. That's why we do a free Facebook group. That's why we do a challenge. That's why we do lower level masterminds and upper level masterminds, so that there's always somewhere to fit so that you're never completely in the dark and alone. And this is why we can go fast, is we're doing it as a community and we're doing it together. Okay. But so to wrap up, the reason why this podcast came up, if you're listening to this, well, we're still going to do this no matter when. So wherever you're listening to do this, reach out to us and get more information on it. But if you go to cashflowtactics.com/cashflowheaven, here in about a week, myself and Ryan with a team of cameramen and some of our higher level mastermind members are all going out to the Lou. And what are we going to do in the Lou, Jimmy?
We are going to spend a day doing a active real estate business soup to nuts, whether it's wholesaling, flipping, or property managing and raising money.
So we're inviting everyone out for a front row seat for
Don't worry,
one
it's not a
day.
disclaimer to a $10,000 package by Sunday evening either.
This is not that. And it's not a free dinner where we're going to sell you something and then sell you something again and then sell you something again.
No, I got a timeshare in Colorado.
I've got some beachfront property in Arizona too. So but what it is, it's one day to sit front row seat to the system Jimmy has built and begin to understand it. So whether you want to be active in real estate and learn how you're going, like the active side of building the machine like Jimmy did, or whether you're like me and you just need to get your head around the system and you want to do it a lot faster, you can sit and see the system tip to tail and understand it, and then take that knowledge and apply it to generate your leveraged income. So we call this Cashflow Heaven Tour. As of right now, we only do it once a year. This is the only time. It's just like Willy Wonka opening up the chocolate factory. One time you can come in and tour what's going on the inside with Jimmy. Okay. So we'll have half a day of classroom. We'll have half a day of touring and walking through actual properties. And this is the closest thing you're going to get to a CFT reality TV show. So at the very least, it's going to be entertaining.
I'm so excited. Like, I don't care if I make any sense. Just if Susie and I are funnier than Chip and Joanna, it's a win for me. I don't care if anybody learns anything. It's just about humor. So
it's just about we're going to stage so many fights.
How can I aggravate my wife on video is what it's going to come down to.
And you do a very good job of that. She's going to blush a lot through this whole thing. So if you're interested in getting your head around the system, right, and you want to do it much faster than attending the courses, attending the calls that we have, you want to do it all in one day, you're welcome to join us. And in this current COVID world, of course, we've made this virtual. So like I said, we're paying out of our own pocket. We're bringing 2 videographers, a boatload of camera equipment, and more cell phones than we can all hold, so that we can stream every aspect of this to the comfort of your own home. So this is the only time you'll ever, like I said, be invited inside the chocolate factory to see all of the elements and learn the system.
Oh, so Brad's looking for the link, Brad.
So if you want to be part of that, I will type it in right now. Let's see. I'm going to double check. I think it's Cashflow Tactics, Cashflow /Cashflow Heaven. Let me make sure that's right.
And if you're listening to this podcast like a year from now, it'll also be recorded too.
It'll be recorded, and that information will go on the same landing page there. So Chad, I got you your link. Whoop. Of course, I did my Facebooks. So that's where it is. You can go to there. And whether you're listening to this too late, it'll be July 18th. So a week from tomorrow, based on this recording, we're going to try to rush this episode out, so you've got a little bit of time to listen to it. But if you want to come out and join us, that's the link. If you missed it, but you want the information, or you want to know when we're going to next, go back to the page, because it will be there. And yes, the price of admission is worth just coming and hanging out with us, Chad. 100%.
Chad, you did it again. That's funny. Chad just wrote, "I want to come to STL to see my besties."
And that's worth the link right there.
Glenn also made me laugh with a comment up there. Oh yeah, we can trade Instagram likes for houses for sure. Instagram like is the most valuable currency in my world.
That's another podcast episode that we're currently working on, is how to trade
Instagram likes. Yeah.
It's going to be great. So with that said, again, hopefully you've learned why leveraged income is the path that we need to go and what leads into it, namely learning to understand the system and not getting blinded by the products that are right in front of us, right? System first, product second, and that nasty word passive income is a lie, and we shouldn't build our hopes and our foundations on that. So with that, Jimmy, you got anything to sign off with?
No, it's a fun podcast. Just remember, passive income comes after hyperactive active income.
Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next episode, if not in person in the Lou. Talk to you guys soon. With that, we'll end the podcast. So let's check our comments out here. Hopefully you guys like that.
Can I read this question real quick?
Yes.
What do you think about investing in a real estate fund with 11% return last year? It was not a traditional REIT. I'm not really interested in holding rentals myself. That was from Jackie Bartel. You cannot make a decision based off previous rate of return. Last year also was one of the greatest economic years in history, and now we are in a pandemic. So the short answer, you can't make a decision off that criteria alone.
Yeah, that's the thing, Jackie. The 11% return last year's a lie, right? Because it's a short window, right? So I would go back to you, Jackie, and say, how much do you understand about the system, the active activity behind that return? And are you confident that that activity that's being done will still produce that type of return next year and the year after and the year after, right? So that's the system related question to it. And then I would push back on, I'm not interested in owning rentals. Well, why? And I'm going to say this less nicely. I don't really care what you're interested in or not. I want to look at your game plan and say, where are you at right now? Where do you want to be in 10 years? And how big is that gap? And then the gap is what determines the activities that we need to take. If that gap can be filled by not owning and managing real estate, wonderful, more power to you. But if the gap is bigger and it requires that, you've got to ask yourself the question, are you going to become the person who can be comfortable doing that? Or are you going to extend your time frames? Because those are the two. Or are you going to make more money? I guess those are really the three options. So I would go back to your game plan and say, what does your game plan tell you that you need to do? Does it tell you you need to own them? Does it tell you you need to make more money? Or does it tell you that doing a fund and giving up pillars, thus giving up return, thus taking more risk, will get you where you want to go?
We should also do a podcast where we'll take like one house and I'll show you how I could ethically tell you it gets a 5% return, or ethically show you how I would call it a 25% return.
Ooh. And then we'll give you we'll give you the software, or show you where you can get the software we created that will red light, yellow light, green light, demonstrate those principles.
But
and we're going
to rate of return, really not that important. Probably another podcast episode. And two, it's such a butchered term. You cannot trust it.
Okay. I'm just because I want to riff on this for a second, Jimmy. That's past performance lies, but what doesn't lies are the underlying principles of the property, right? So that's deeper in my comment of, well, we need to look at the active activity. We need to look at the way the deal is structured. We need to look at the type of real estate it is, what the rents are, what are the inputs, and will those inputs still produce the long-term outcome that we're looking for, or was that a blip, right? And this is the classic, you guys, I worked on Wall Street for years. I put the financials together to take companies public. The process is the extreme side of this is called pump and dump schemes. Okay. And the SEC hates these. They get prosecuted all the time, where we'll do something inside of a business to create a bunch of perceived value. And then the early investors dump the stock before the long-term outcome is seen. Right. So that happens in investments all the time. Right. So I'm not saying that's the case in this particular one, but the phenomenon of pump and dump exists because people want to just look at what it did last year and then pretend passive income exists and then just say, well, that's what it's going to do next year. And then if it doesn't go right, they go back to Jimmy's jujitsu poopy pants syndrome and say, well, you must be a bad teacher or you sold me a bad investment, right? No, you didn't understand the system and you're a poor investor. It's on you, buyer beware, but it's on you to be able to know what you're getting. Not on your teacher, not on the person selling you the investment. And that's why we won't let people buy from our suppliers or our network of inventory without them telling us what they want, right? And them telling us, Jimmy, do you ever let somebody buy real estate from you that just says, oh, don't tell me the numbers, I trust you?
No. Let me translate that for you. I'm too lazy to do the work, and I want to hold out that I trusted you, Jimmy, when I want to bitch at you that things aren't going the way I want them to. That's what that translates, how you translate that statement.
There you go. Cool. Okay, was there any?
I just got Jackie said, my gap is like the Grand Canyon and time is short. On the long term, you'd be surprised how big a gap you can overcome, Jackie.
Yep. And if that's the case, I'd be saying you've got some work to do either inside of production or inside of becoming somebody that can manage investments with more than 2 pillars. That's where your game plan would be directing you. And don't get distracted by products that seem easier to get there. Let's look for the right system that will be able to bridge that gap. And that system, if it's the Grand Canyon, is going to have to require leverage and it's going to have to require some time input.
It doesn't matter. Also, doesn't matter how big an elephant you got to eat. Just start chewing.
Yep. And it always goes faster, which has been the fun part. Okay. Sweet. I think that's it.
That is.
We're going to sign off. Thanks for listening, everybody. And we hope to see you all in the loo.